I'm Elizabeth, a literary princess. If you are new here, welcome. I have a PhD in English literature with a focus on Victorian women novelists, and as you might expect, I love to read. Today I have the first of my Victober videos for you, and we will be talking about what Victorian literature I have read in the last year. So I started doing this last year as an update to my video on what Victorian literature have I read from 2 years ago. And I like the idea of making this a yearly thing as my first Victober video of the month. This will also be acting as a kind of update to a video I made last year on reading a book from every Victorian year. So last year I went through, made a spreadsheet because I love a spreadsheet to see if I had read a book from each Victorian year. I had not. I was missing 13 of them. So naturally I made a challenge and on StoryGraph and have been keeping track of that. And I have now read books from 5 out of those 13 years. So I will be mentioning which books count for that as we go through them. Let's jump in. My year goes from October to October because my life revolves around Victober, I guess. That's fine. Okay by me. So we will be starting with the books that I read from Victober last year. And the first of those is No Name by Wilkie Collins from 1862. I loved this. This was one of my top books of the year. So good. Ugh. Just absolutely loved it. Not quite as good as The Woman in White, but it got close. So yeah, this was 5 stars. I'm not gonna give summaries of them because I feel like, I don't know, maybe I'll say a little bit about them. That's a sensation novel. So this next one was also for Victober, and it is A Woman of No Importance by Oscar Wilde from 1893, which I have in a bind-up of The Importance of Being Earnest and other plays. I've been making my way through Oscar Wilde's plays, kind of one per year, although this Victober I'm hoping to do 2. I liked this. It was a kind of typical comedy with social commentary, which is what I've come to expect from Wilde. I think I gave it 4 stars. Oh goodness. Next was Ariadne by Ouida from 1877. And I did not like this at all. I spent ages reading this book because I just didn't want to read it. And it was not it. I gave it 2 stars. I feel like that might have been generous, but maybe it was just because I do like Ouida's writing. And I remember there was a dog that I liked. But yeah, no, this was not it at all. Yeah, no. Mm-mm. The next one, though, was fantastic. This was The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle from 1892. I had read about half of these short stories before, and so I, reread those and then read the ones I hadn't read before, and I loved these. I love Sherlock Holmes. This was a 5-star read. Now we get to the first of the ones that counted for a year I did not have. This is Dear Book by Harriet Martineau from 1839. And this was another top book of the year for me. I adored this. And it's great. You can see how Martineau's a very early woman writer. Obviously, 1839. And you can see where she is influenced by Jane Austen, but you can then see where other authors later in the period, such as Elizabeth Gaskell and Margaret Oliphant, and even George Eliot, build off of what Martineau has started to do. It's great. I loved this. 5 stars. And this next one I had started for Victober and did not finish in Victober, and that is The Daisy Chain by Charlotte Mary Young from 1856. I don't remember if I gave this 4 or 4.5, but I really enjoyed it. It's story of a family with a kind of bookish daughter, very much like Little Women. And and it was just fantastic. I love Charlotte Mary Young. She's quickly climbing her way to being one of my favorite authors because I've loved everything I've read by her. Next up, we have a work of nonfiction. This is Sisters of Charity, Catholic and Protestant, Abroad and at Home by Anna Jameson from 1855. This was originally a speech that she gave or a lecture, and then it was published in print format. I was reading this for my dissertation. Anna Jameson kind of constructed her writing as like this kind of extension of the woman's duty to the home and nurturing the home and then nurturing the world. It was a whole thing that I had to talk about in my dissertation. So I read through this because it was short and I knew there were some quotes from it that it would be helpful. I gave this 3 stars. Like, it's not riveting material, but it was interesting. Another Harriet Martineau, but also a work of nonfiction. This is her autobiography from 1877. So again, I read this for my dissertation. I was analyzing Margaret Oliphant's autobiography and how she constructed herself as a woman writer. So I was kind of comparing how other women did the same thing. Martineau really structures herself differently than most women writers of the time. She follows more of the heroic man of letters format that the male authors of the time would use, whereas the women were very much, oh, my writing is an extension of my work in the home. She was like, no, no. When my brother saw what I wrote, he said, oh yes, leave that housework for other women and you go do this. This was really interesting. I gave it 3.5 stars. It is long, like a bit chunky, but it gave insight into her writing life, but also into her family life. Like, her relationship with her mother was not good. And Oliphant was actually super critical of this book because she was like, Martin was just airing their dirty laundry and she shouldn't be doing that. It was very interesting. Obviously, I had a lot of fun writing this dissertation chapter. Next up is another one that ticked off a year for my reading a book for each year. This is The Cricket on the Hearth by Charles Dickens from 1845, one of his Christmas novellas. What did I rate this? I don't remember. Probably 4? Yep, it was 4. It was a nice story. It was not as good as A Christmas Carol. It was also much less Christmassy than A Christmas Carol because I think it takes place like after Christmas. It's like between Christmas and New Year. So it's like not really Christmassy quite in the same way, but it was a very lovely little story. So I gave it 4 stars. So next up, I read Idella by Sarah Grand from 1888. This was the first book in her New Woman trilogy that I read entirely out of order, and it was my least favorite. So my favorite was the last one. I think Grand really grew as a writer between Idella in 1888 and the Beth book in 1890 something. I don't remember what year particularly, but I did not like this one. I gave it 2 stars. I didn't like the narrator, who was a man looking at this woman, and I just didn't think it worked very well for what Grand was trying to do. I am glad that I read it so that I've read all of her New Woman trilogy and I can see the development, and the development is fantastic. Like, from this, which was ugh, and having a man be the narrator, to the Heavenly Twins, which was 3rd-person narrator and a lot better. But then going to the Beth book with a 1st-person woman narrator, and just utterly phenomenal book. So, yeah. Idella was 2 stars, but it gave way to some really good books. Another one checking off a year is Poems by Currer, Ellis, and Acton Bell by Charlotte, Emily, and Anne Bronte. This is from 1846. It was the book of poetry that they published together. I believe I gave this 3 stars. I really love Emily's poetry. She's a fantastic poet. Like, some of Anne's I liked as well, but Charlotte's, Charlotte was not a poet. She just wasn't. She was a novelist. She wasn't a poet. That's my opinion. So yeah, 3 stars. And I read, right at the end of the year, The Way We Live Now by Anthony Trollope from 1875, which is now falling apart. The cover has come loose. I read it. It was a used copy anyway. I read it, and then I lent it to my mother, and she read it, and yeah, but whatever. It was very inexpensive. This was another top book of 2024. Loved this. Just, it was only my second Trollope. Well, technically third, because I think I read his autobiography. It was my second Trollope novel, and definitely my favorite of his so far. Please excuse my voice. I have a cold, so if I'm like suddenly croaking, that's why. This was fantastic. So glad that I read it. I had started it for Victober 2023 and DNF'd it just because the edition I had was falling apart. Not this edition, although now this edition is falling apart. Whatever. And I didn't have time for it. I'm so glad that I made time for it in 2024. 5 stars. Now I decided to give Ouida a chance to redeem herself, and I picked up Pasquerel from 1873, ticking off another year that I had missing. This was not the book that I had meant to read for 1873. I had no idea that this was from 1873 and would count. Like it just happened. I was like, oh! I don't remember what I originally said I was going to read from 1873, but whatever. Another of Ouida's Italian novels, and it was so much better than Ariadne. Oh, so much better. I actually really enjoyed this one. I gave this 4 stars, and I was like, oh, thank God, Ouida, you've redeemed yourself in my eyes. Because Ariadne was rough. But I actually highly recommend Pasquerel. I thought it was a lot of fun. That was the first Victorian book that I read for 2025, although I had actually started it in 2024, I think. All right, and now we have the book that I read for March of the Mammoths this year, Our Mutual Friend by Charles Dickens from 1865. Oh, this is so good. I think this is my favorite Dickens novel. I do have to reread David Copperfield to fully say that this is now my favorite Dickens novel, but I'm pretty sure it is. I loved this so much. This is one of my top books of the year. You will be seeing this later in the month in another video, in another list. Unless something happens and some of these books I'm reading are very, very good and this gets bumped off, but you'll be seeing this again. So good. 5 stars. Another one ticking off a year. This is Daisy Miller by Henry James from 1878. Also not the book I picked for 1878, although that book will be coming in a few minutes. This was fine. I was like, what's the fuss about? I'm like, it was fine. It should have been longer. I felt like it didn't have enough space and time to fully build the characters, and I was just like, I didn't hate it or anything, but I was just like, yeah, that was a book. That was a book and I read it. Another book that I'm pretty sure you're going to be seeing in a later video this month, this is The Heir of Redcliffe by Charlotte Mary Young from 1853. So, as I said with the Daisy Chain, I'm starting to really love Charlotte Mary Young, and this was a 5-star read. Sir Guy Morville might be one of my favorite Victorian characters now. Like, if I refilmed that video that I did last year, which was my top 10 Victorian characters, I think Sir Guy Morville would be on there because I really, really liked him. I was kind of swooning over him. I never do that. I was like, wow, I'd marry you if I were a Victorian lady in this book. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. blown away. I need to get myself a physical copy because I want to reread it. And the Kindle version that I have kind of does some weird formatting stuff sometimes, and I'm like, no, I just want to, I want the physical copy. It's not currently in print, I don't think, but hopefully I'll be able to find an old version of, I think Oxford did it, or it would have been World's Classics. It was before it was Oxford World's Classics. They did it, and then another one did it. And I'm hoping I'll be able to find a copy of one of those. Now we come to one that I do have a physical copy of, but I lent it to my mother. And when I went to find it today for this video, I was like, oh God, where is it? Did I lend it to her? I don't remember. So I had to call her to find out, because if I hadn't lent it to her, that means I put it somewhere weird. But no, I did not put it somewhere weird. I lent it to my mother, who will really enjoy it. This is The Warden by Anthony Trollope from 1855. This is the first book in the Barsetshire Chronicles. I had read Barchester Towers, which is the second book, and which you really need to read The Warden to understand. And I hear people saying that The Warden isn't really a great place to start with Trollope. I actually liked it quite a bit. I gave it 4 stars. And I'm very excited to now reread Barchester Towers, knowing what the hell is going on. And then the final Victorian book that I read in the past year is one that I just finished at the beginning of September, and that is The Return of the Native by Thomas Hardy from 1878, which was the book I had proposed for 1878 back when I made the reading a book for every Victorian year video. Daisy Miller just happened to. I picked up on a whim. I loved this. This was 5 stars. You will be getting a review of it next week, so I'm not gonna say a huge amount, just so good. So that is all of the Victorian literature that I have read in the past year. Let me know down in the comments, have you read any of these? What did you think of them? What are some of the Victorian books you have picked up lately? If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to see more of my bookish content. It has been great chatting with you. I will see you soon for another Victober video. Bye.